Welcome to the Special Forces in World War II podcast, transmitting on this frequency. This broadcast is your dedicated channel for comprehensive intelligence regarding World War II Special Forces operations. Our transmissions encompass in-depth analysis of their strategic maneuvers, cutting-edge equipment, illustrious biographies, and an array of pertinent subjects. The orchestration of these transmissions is executed by the expert team of the Special Forces in World War II website, a squad deeply immersed in the historical theatre. For further insights, visual aids, and captured moments frozen in time, navigate to our virtual headquarters at worldwar2-soft.com. Your immersion into the front lines of knowledge awaits. Over and out. Welcome back to another episode of the Special Forces in World War II podcast, where we explore the bold, the daring, and the extraordinary tactics of special and specialized forces in World War II that helped shape the outcome of the greatest conflict in modern history. I'm your host, Michael Wyers, and as always, we're here to unravel the hidden stories behind the daring exploits of special and specialized forces in World War II. June 1944. The Allies are preparing for the greatest seaborne invasion in history. Among the thousands of soldiers, one unit is given a mission unlike any other: the U.S. Army Rangers. Their task is extraordinary. However, before the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc or Omaha Beach could be assaulted, the Rangers had to be forged into a single, striking force. In late 1943 and early 1944, the 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalions were brought together in Great Britain to train, reorganize, and prepare for one of the most dangerous missions of D-Day. This episode follows the Provisional Ranger Group through those final months of preparation, from their arrival in England to their grueling training at the Assault Training Center, to the planning, equipment trials, and last-minute changes that shaped their role in Operation Overlord. During Operation Neptune, 5th Corps of the U.S. First Army receives the task of assaulting the German coastal defenses along a 5.5-kilometer stretch of shoreline known as Omaha Beach. This front lies between Vierville-sur-Mer and Colleville-sur-Mer. The objective for D-Day is clear: establish a beachhead extending 5 to 6 kilometers inland, from the Drôme River to the area near Isigny-sur-Mer. 2 infantry divisions, the 1st and the 29th, form the spearhead of the assault, supported by armor and artillery. But on the western flank, a more complex and dangerous task falls to a specialist force. 6 kilometers west of Omaha Beach lies Pointe du Hoc. The Germans have fortified this promontory with a battery designed for 6 155mm howitzers of French origin. 4 guns sit in open emplacements, while 2 are enclosed in concrete casemates. Reconnaissance in April and May shows further construction in progress. The battery is a serious threat. With a range of 23 kilometers, the guns can strike both the approach routes to Omaha Beach and the naval anchorage supporting 5th Corps. They can also reach the sea lanes and transport zones serving 7th Corps during its landings at Utah Beach. The defenses here are formidable. Between Grand Camp-les-Bains and the Omaha sector, the Norman Plateau ends in steep coastal cliffs. At Pointe du Hoc, they rise up to 30 meters, sheer or even overhanging the narrow beach below. There is no natural cover for an attacker. Aerial photographs and reports from local civilians agree. The Germans consider this position nearly impregnable from the sea. They have concentrated their defenses against attack from inland. The point is enclosed by wire and mines, with its flanks guarded by 2 smaller positions armed with machine guns. On the western side, a light anti-aircraft gun adds firepower. These flanking posts can deliver enfilade fire onto the beaches beneath the cliffs and block an approach from the rear. German strength here is estimated at 125 infantry and 85 artillerymen of the 716th Infantry Division. This formation, responsible for the coastal defense line from the River Wear to the River Orne, consists largely of non-German conscripts and is rated of limited combat value. Elements of the 726th Infantry Regiment hold the Vierville-Grandcamp sector, where the cliffs limit the number of strongpoints. The nearest positions to Pointe du Hoc are more than 1.5 kilometers to the west and just over 3 kilometers to the east. There is no defense in depth here. The 716th Infantry Division is stretched thin across nearly 50 kilometers of coastline. The nearest mobile reserve, the 352nd Infantry Division, is stationed inland in the Saint-Lô-Caumont area, a 10 to 12-hour march from the coast. The mission to take Pointe du Hoc falls to the Ranger Group, attached to the 116th Regimental Combat Team and commanded by Lieutenant Colonel James E. Rudder. The 2nd Ranger Battalion, under Rudder's direct control, brings companies D, E, and F for the initial assault. They are to land at H hour, scale the cliffs, and capture the battery. The 5th Ranger Battalion, under Lieutenant Colonel Max F. Schneider, forms the support force alongside companies A and B of the 2nd Ranger Battalion. If the assault succeeds, they will land at the point, join Rudder's men, and push inland to cut the coastal road between Grandcamp and Vierville. From there, they are to hold until joined by the 116th Regimental Combat Team, before advancing west toward Grandcamp and the Mazy Battery Complex. A contingency exists. If no signal of success is received by H plus 30 minutes, the support force will divert to Vierville, land behind the 116th, and move overland to Pointe du Hoc, avoiding combat unless unavoidable. Meanwhile, Company C of the 2nd Ranger Battalion has its own mission. Landing with the first wave of the 116th Regimental Combat Team, it is tasked with destroying German strongpoints near Pointe de la Percée, immediately west of Omaha Beach. But let's start at the beginning. On December 1st, 1943, the men of the 2nd Ranger Battalion arrive in England. Companies A through F, along with the Medical Detachment and Headquarters Company, disembark at 10 in the morning. By 6 that evening, they are on trains, heading west toward their new station at Boudé in Cornwall. Headquarters Company's advanced detachment, already in place, makes the same move. At the same time, across the Atlantic, the 5th Ranger Battalion remains at Fort Dix, New Jersey, where they continue preparations for deployment. On December 2nd, 1943, the Rangers reach Boudé by train at 1 in the afternoon. A local American artillery band is waiting on the platform to welcome them. Old friends meet again as the advance party greets the main body, and the reunion is warm and reassuring. From the station, the battalion marches uphill through the winding streets. The climb is steep, and every man carries his full kit: overcoats, helmets, and packs. Their destination is the battalion mess, a converted garage now serving as a dining hall. After their first meal in England, officers brief them on behavior among the locals. The most surprising news is that there are no barracks. Instead, they are to live in private homes, as local families have given up rooms to house them. During the days that follow, from December 3rd through December 10th, the Rangers ease into life in Cornwall. The first week of training is light, giving the men time to recover from the sea voyage and settle into billets. Soon, the tempo increases. Physical drills sharpen their fitness, weapons training refreshes old skills, and compass work and night exercises drive home the fact that Rangers must be ready under any conditions. On December 11th, 1943, the advanced detachment of the 5th Ranger Battalion assembles at Fort Hamilton in New York. This small group sails ahead of the main body, tasked with arranging billets and facilities for the battalion's arrival in Britain. On December 20th, 1943, the 5th Ranger Battalion moves to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, ready for embarkation. That same day, their advanced detachment reaches Crewe in Wales before moving on to Langattock to continue preparations. Christmas Day, December 25th, 1943, is spent in Boody. By now, the townspeople know the Rangers well, and many invite them into their homes for dinner. The battalion also holds its own feast: turkey with all the trimmings, beer, cakes, and sweets. That afternoon, the Rangers host a party for the children of Bude and nearby villages. They have pooled their candy rations for weeks to create a sweet table, and the sight of gum and chocolate lights up the children's faces. Later, a USO troop entertains the battalion, followed by a dance that goes late into the night. The men return to billets heavy with food, light in spirit, and grateful for a Christmas well spent. On December 28th, 1943, the battalion disperses. Companies B, C, and E remain in Bude with headquarters and the medical detachment, while Company A moves to Titchfield in Hampshire, D Company to Parkgate, and F Company to Botley. Each is joined by medical orderlies from the battalion's medical detachment. The journey takes them by train to Southampton, and then by truck to their new billets. From December 29th through the end of the year, training continues but is now divided by company. A, D, and F focus on conditioning and watermanship in Southampton Bay, learning the handling of motor dories and the techniques of disembarking from landing craft under the eye of British commando instructors. At the same time, B, C, and E march 80 kilometers on a reconnaissance exercise from Bude to Braunton Sands in North Devon, testing navigation, endurance, and small unit movement. During this same period, Lieutenant Colonel James Rudder travels to the United States Army Assault Training Center in Devon. He observes its methods and studies the latest techniques in amphibious assault, the very skills his Rangers will soon need for the beaches of Normandy. By the close of December 1943, the Rangers are spread across Cornwall, Devon, and Hampshire. Their training is relentless, their purpose clear. Within 6 months, these men will be called upon to land in France. On Tuesday, January 4th, 1944, Lieutenant Colonel James E. Rudder is summoned to London. His battalion is stationed at Sandown, on the Isle of Wight, and he is accompanied by his executive officer, Major Max Schneider. Their destination is the headquarters of General Omar Bradley's 1st United States Army at Bryanston Square, near Paddington Station. At this point, neither Rudder nor Schneider holds bigot clearance. Under Operation Neptune's security system, ordinary secret classification is no longer enough. A higher level, secret security, later renamed top secret, grants only general knowledge of invasion plans. The most restricted level, secret security bigot, reveals precise operational details, objectives, and timings. Rudder and Schneider are not yet trusted with this clearance. Their meeting, therefore, covers broad tactical concepts only, without mention of exact dates. Bigot access will not come until March. Colonel Truman Tubby Thorson, G3 Operations Officer at 1st Army, conducts the briefing. He explains the importance of Point du Hoc. Maps show the arcs of fire from the German guns positioned there. If operational, those weapons could threaten the entire transport area offshore from Beach 46, soon to be renamed Omaha Beach. At this stage, Utah Beach is not yet part of the Neptune plan. Thorson instructs Rudder to begin planning a direct assault on Point du Hoc. This work is to be carried out with 5th Corps and British combined operations. The mission is clear: capture and neutralize the battery before it can fire on the invasion fleet. Rudder is also told that the newly arrived 5th Ranger Battalion will join his 2nd Ranger Battalion. Together, they will form a Provisional Ranger Group under his command. On Thursday, January 6, 1944, the 5th Ranger Battalion is still assembled for embarkation. Several officers are detached for duty at the New York port of embarkation Brooklyn, serving as loading officers, but returned to duty the following day. On the evening of Friday, January 7th, 1944, the men of the 5th Ranger Battalion leave Camp Kilmer. Their crowded military train carries them to the port, where they board HMS Mauretania. That same day, Rudder requests that Major Schneider be sent back to the United States for medical reasons. Schneider, a veteran of earlier Ranger operations, is showing both physical and psychological strain. Captain Block, the battalion medical officer, warns that a breakdown may be close. The request reaches Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, but it is denied. Eisenhower's staff cannot release an officer with such experience on the eve of the invasion. Schneider remains with the battalion. On Saturday, January 8, 1944, as HMS Mauretania prepares to sail, she is rammed in the bow by the American tanker Hat Creek. The impact forces her back to dock, where she sustains further light damage striking the pier. Repairs are completed quickly, and at 16:30 on Sunday, January 9, 1944, she sails again, carrying the 5th Rangers and thousands of other troops bound for Liverpool. On Monday, January 10, 1944, the 2nd Ranger Battalion prepares for raids from southern England. Company A moves to Beechborough House near Folkestone in Kent, while a detachment from Company D trains at Dartmouth before shifting base to Titchfield, Hampshire. Company A, reinforced to 94 men, is tasked with a prisoner raid near Calais. 3 versions of the plan are rehearsed, ranging from snatching a prisoner on the beach to probing enemy command posts inland. Training includes boat drills in Dover Bay and full-scale exercises before senior commanders. Despite readiness, the raid is cancelled. Rough seas prevent embarkation. The detachment from Company D trains with No. 4 Commando, focusing on reconnaissance and dory handling. Their assignment is to land silently on Herm, reconnoiter the island, and withdraw to a waiting gunboat. Communications drills are complex, involving multiple radio nets, signal lamps, and escape contingencies. But by the end of January, this mission too is abandoned. Adverse weather in the Channel makes the crossing too risky, and the Royal Navy refuses to proceed. By mid-January 1944, the 2nd Ranger Battalion is scattered along the south coast of England. D and F companies move into Hampshire. E Company settles at Freshwater, and C Company at Sandown on the Isle of Wight. B Company and elements of headquarters remain further west in Boody, Cornwall. The dispersal is deliberate. Every billet lies close to the sea, giving each company access to amphibious training grounds. Day after day, the Rangers embark in Royal Navy landing craft, practice their beach assaults, and return cold, wet, and bruised. D Company specializes in demolitions, learning to blast obstacles and defenses under live fire conditions, both by day and by night. At the Hamble Estuary, where D and F companies are based, embarkation points lie close at hand. The cycle becomes routine. Load onto landing craft, hit the beach, destroy obstacles, fire live rounds, and re-embark. Along the waterfront, they build a rifle range, adding accuracy training to their daily schedule of amphibious assaults. On Wednesday, January 19th, 1944, the Mauretania reaches Liverpool. The 5th Ranger Battalion disembarks and moves inland to Leominster in Herefordshire, where they begin their own period of training. 2 days later, on Friday, January 21st, 1944, the 2nd Ranger Battalion once again disperses. Company A remains at Folkestone. B Company crosses to the Isle of Wight, arriving at Shanklin at 9:30. C and E Companies, together with the medical detachment, settle at Sandown. D Company is based at Freshwater, while elements of headquarters are at Titchfield. By the end of the month, the battalion stretches across the southern coast of England, each company immersed in amphibious drills and demolitions, building the skills they will need for the assault to come. In February 1944, General Bernard Montgomery, the newly appointed commander of Allied land forces, raises concern that continued commando raids may reveal Allied intentions. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force responds by cancelling further coastal raids. As preparations for Operation Overlord progress, several tactical options for the assault on Pointe du Hoc are reviewed. Responsibility for Omaha Beach lies with V Corps, and its G3 Operations Section begins drafting a plan that fits within the Corps' wider objectives. On February 4, 1944, during a planning session, Major General Leonard T. Gero, commander of 5th Corps, outlines his expectations. Gero, a former assistant chief of the War Plans Division in Washington, brings with him a strong background in strategy. He recommends that the bulk of the 2 Ranger battalions land west of Beach 46, beyond the cliffs, to neutralize enemy positions as far as the Pass d'Isigny. He proposes that they come ashore behind the Roches de Grand Camp if naval conditions allow. This would prevent the Rangers from interfering with naval bombardment or air strikes. If such a landing proves unworkable, Gero offers an alternative. The Rangers could instead land on the right flank of the 29th Infantry Division's sector. He also suggests that the commander of the 1st Infantry Division might wish to employ Ranger elements on his division's left, depending on battlefield needs. The Roches de Grand Camp are a band of rocky shoals stretching east from the mouth of the Vire River to within a few hundred meters of Pointe du Hoc. The Pass d'Isigny is a tidal channel through marshes west of Grand Camp, roughly 5 kilometers from the cliffs. In raising these locations, Gero is almost certainly referring to the wider threat posed by German batteries near Mazy, positioned inland from Grand Camp. On February 14, 1944, E Company of the 5th Ranger Battalion is recorded at Acton Court, Wrexham. The reason for this temporary detachment is unclear, but the company rejoins the battalion after several days. That same afternoon, at 5 o'clock, the medical detachment of the 2nd Ranger Battalion arrives in Bude, Cornwall, travelling by truck. Earlier that morning, at 8:15, D Company departs Shanklin on the Isle of Wight by train, and, after a long day of travel, reaches Bude by 7 in the evening. E Company leaves the Isle of Wight on the same day and arrives in Cornwall later that evening. Headquarters Company also returns to Bude, departing Titchfield, Hampshire at 11 o'clock and arriving at 6 in the evening. 21 enlisted men from Headquarters Company return from detached service with Company A. On February 15, 1944, a company returns to Bude after the final cancellation of its prisoner raid near Calais. That same morning, B Company departs Shanklin at 8:15 and C Company leaves Sandown at 8:20. Both reach Bude by 7 that evening and are billeted in private homes. F Company also moves that day. They depart Botley, Hampshire, by truck just after midnight, reach Fareham by 12:15, board their train at 12:30, and arrive in Bude at 7 in the evening. On February 25, 1944, 1st United States Army issues its initial Neptune plan. This document contains no clear guidance on how the Rangers are to capture Pointe du Hoc. 2 days later, on February 27, 1944, Colonel Hewitt, the 5th Corps Assistant G3 for Operations, issues a request for a combined study. Representatives from 5th Corps, the Ranger Battalions, the Navy, and British Combined Operations Headquarters are ordered to determine suitable tactics for assaulting and securing Pointe du Hoc. Preliminary planning reveals key constraints. The Ranger Battalions are limited to 6 infantry landing ships and their assigned landing craft. Their assault cannot begin before H hour. An air bombardment is scheduled to strike the cliffs between H-4 hours and H-1 hour and 30 minutes. Naval gunfire will follow opening at H-40 minutes and continuing until the moment of landing. Planners also raise the possibility of an airborne operation in support of the seaborne assault. This option remains on the table as planning moves forward into March. The final assault plan will need to strike a balance between tactical necessity, available resources, and the demands of the wider Allied invasion force. On March 1, 1944, Detachment A of Headquarters Company, 2nd Ranger Battalion, moves to the U.S. Assault Training Center in Devon. That very same day, the 5th Ranger Battalion leaves Leominster and travels north to the British Commando Training Center at Tychnabruaich in Scotland. Their course in the highlands near Lochaber and Fort William proves decisive. The Rangers are pushed to their limits. Training covers physical fitness, survival, map work, cliff and boat assaults, demolitions, and unarmed combat. They study Allied and German weapons alike. Exercises are relentless, carried out by day and night across mountain slopes and in foul weather. Live fire is constant. Bren guns, rifles, grenades and mortars roar at close range to simulate battle. Injuries are frequent, and men are even killed during training. Amphibious assaults are rehearsed daily on beaches fortified to resemble those of Normandy. Map problems involve 70-kilometer marches. Students sleep in the rain, ford rivers, and stumble on in exhaustion while making tactical decisions. Knife fighting, tank hunting, and minefield demolitions are repeated until they become instinctive. The month in Scotland is remembered as the hardest training the battalion ever endures. Many Rangers later credit it with saving their lives in Normandy and beyond. Meanwhile, the 5th Ranger Battalion faces a crisis of leadership, the Captain's Revolt. Lieutenant Colonel Owen E. Carter, the commanding officer, comes under heavy criticism from his company commanders. Unlike James Rudder or William Darby, Carter is seen as aloof and rigid, far removed from the Ranger tradition of shared hardship. On March 4, 1944, 3 company commanders bypassed the chain of command and appealed directly to Rudder, urging him to intervene. Major Richard Sullivan, the battalion's executive officer, reacts immediately, relieving all 3 officers of command. Yet when Rudder raises the matter at 5th Corps headquarters, senior officers side with the captains. Carter is relieved instead, and the 3 company commanders are reinstated. Rudder recommends Major Max Schneider as the new commander of the 5th Rangers. Despite earlier concerns about his health, Rudder trusts him completely. V Corps approves the appointment on March 24th, and Schneider assumes command 2 days later on March 26, 1944. To fill the vacancy in the 2nd Rangers, Captain Cleveland Lytle is promoted to executive officer. Also on March 4th, 16 enlisted men from other U.S. Army units are assigned to Headquarters Company, 2nd Ranger Battalion. These specialists in artillery and armor form the basis of a new cannon platoon. 2 modified M3 half-tracks are fitted with forward-firing 75mm guns. 2nd Lieutenant Frank Kennard commands one section. 1st Lieutenant Conway Epperson commands the other. Officially designated 75mm gun motor carriages, the vehicles are designed as tank destroyers, but with limited traverse, they rely on the half-track itself for aim. Ammunition lockers crowd the floor, while Bangalore torpedoes, petrol cans, and personal kit are strapped outside. Within the battalion, the platoon is viewed as expendable, a short-lived experiment meant for D-Day and little beyond. Responsibility for refining the Pointe du Hoc assault plan shifts to British Combined Operations Headquarters in early March. Lieutenant Colonel Dermot Richardson, a veteran of amphibious planning, is assigned the task. On March 3, 1944, he presents his scheme to 5th Corps at Clifton College in Bristol. His plan echoes Géraud's concept, but adds 2 landing zones, one east at Vierville, the other west across the Roches de Grand Camp, plus a small airborne drop south of Pointe du Hoc. The proposal is quickly dismissed. The Royal Navy refuses to risk craft across the shoals at Grand Camp, and German strongpoints dominate the beaches there. Even if successful, Rangers would need to fight several kilometers inland before reaching the battery. The idea of 35 paratroopers is equally unrealistic. Such a force could never breach the heavy landward defenses. Richardson's plan defaults to a landing at Vierville and an overland advance, but this too would delay the attack for hours. The task of finalizing the plan returns to Rudder and his staff. Drawing on lessons from Operation Torch, they recognize that batteries must be seized immediately, not after long marches. A western approach from Grand Camp is dismissed because of flooded ground, minefields, and ambush points. A landing near Vierville is also rejected. The alternative is bold: land directly at the base of Pointe du Hoc and scale the 30-meter cliffs. Intelligence suggests the defenses face inland, leaving the seaward approach less protected. Climbing under fire will be dangerous, but it places the Rangers immediately on their objective. Rudder calculates that only a few companies can fit on the narrow beach at the base of the cliffs. Reinforcements will follow either at Pointe du Hoc or east near Omaha Beach, depending on circumstances. In late March 1944, Rudder meets Major General Clarence Hubner of the 1st Infantry Division. Hubner raises concerns about German gun positions near Pointe Erraz de la Percée, west of Omaha. Recent reconnaissance confirms their threat. The Ranger mission expands once again. In addition to neutralizing Pointe du Hoc, they are now ordered to destroy these additional batteries. By the close of March, the plan is set. The Rangers will scale the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc under fire, neutralize the guns, and then strike further targets threatening Omaha Beach. On April 2, 1944, the 5th Ranger Battalion departs the Commando Training Centre at Tignabruaish, Scotland at 11:45 by motorboat. They arrive at Rothesay at 1:30 after covering 22 kilometres by water and at once embark on TSS Sussex. By 1925, they reach Wemyss Bay, completing a 40-kilometre sea passage. At 21:30, they depart by rail, arriving at Preston around midnight and continue south. At 15:30 the following afternoon, they reach Bronton Camp in North Devon, part of the U.S. Assault Training Center. Here, Major Max Schneider officially assumes command of the battalion. That same day, April 2nd, the 2nd Ranger Battalion departs Bude, Cornwall at 10:30 and arrives at Bronton Camp at 2:30. The Rangers begin a 7-day course in beach and fortification assault. Modern methods of attacking fortified enemy positions are taught in detail and practiced under realistic conditions. Each company is divided into 2 assault teams of 30 men, drilled by Assault Training Center instructors. Training starts with fundamentals. Within days, the men rotate through specialist classes: demolitions and explosives, mines and booby traps, barbed wire, and weapons. Each subject is taught by an expert. The barbed wire group practices every method of cutting, breaching, and bridging obstacles. The demolitions class studies explosive formulas and prepares charges. The mine school teaches probing, neutralizing, and safing, with mine detectors and bare hands alike. The weapons group handles bazookas, flamethrowers, grenades, and small arms until each ranger is confident with their construction, operation, and use in combat. Outside the classroom, stamina is built with long hikes and speed marches across the sandy, hilly ground around Braunton. Men slump and sweat under heavy loads, but discipline keeps them moving. Soon, the sections recombine for larger problems. Platoon and company assaults take shape. On many mornings, the Rangers march to Baggy Point, a headland fortified with pillboxes, dummy targets, and real barbed wire. Here they practice dry and wet runs, rehearsing coordinated attacks. The final test is an assault against a replica of the Atlantic Wall. A wire-cutting team leads. Riflemen cover their advance. Bazooka teams and grenadiers seal enemy slits. Flamethrowers and demolition men follow, pole charges blasting pillboxes open before riflemen storm the position. Each assault ends with the company forming a defensive line, ready for a counterattack. The Rangers earn high praise from instructors, their performance balancing exhaustion with determination. On April 3, 1944, Air Chief Marshal Arthur Tedder warns that heavy bombers are only effective against incomplete bunkers or in last-minute strikes against communications. This echoes the earlier Graham report, which had cast doubt on strategic bombing of hardened targets. The first Joint Fire Plan, issued on April 8, assigns most early attacks to medium bombers of the U.S. 9th Air Force and the Royal Air Force 2nd Tactical Air Force. Heavy bombers are held for final pre-invasion missions under the codename Operation Flashlamp. To preserve secrecy, raids in Normandy are mirrored by attacks in the Pas-de-Calais, part of Operation Fortitude, the deception plan that convinces German commanders the invasion will come at Calais. At the same time, Allied air forces continue Operation Crossbow against German V-weapon sites, a campaign that competes for limited bomber resources. By mid-May, Crossbow is scaled back, releasing squadrons for Overlord. Meanwhile, the Pointe du Hoc assault plan takes final shape. In April, 5th Corps approves a three-part scheme. The forces are designated Force A, Force X, and Force Y. Force A, drawn from headquarters and companies D, E, and F of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, is to land at H-hour directly at the base of the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc. One company will land west of the point, the others to the east. Their mission: scale the cliffs and destroy the German coastal battery. Force X, Company C of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, is to land at H-hour on the right flank of Omaha Beach, at Dog Green sector. They will move west to Pointe-Ras de la Percée, where reconnaissance has spotted German field artillery, and then provide flank security for the main Ranger force. Force Y, consisting of Companies A and B of the 2nd Ranger Battalion and the entire 5th Ranger Battalion, will land at Dog Green in two waves at H+28 and H+30 minutes. They will advance westward along the coast to assault Pointe du Hoc from inland. A and B companies will form the advance guard and secure the flanks. The newly formed Ranger Cannon Platoon, with its improvised 75mm gun half-tracks, will land 2 hours after H-hour at Dog Green and move west along the coastal road in support of Force Y. On April 20th, 1944, this plan is formally issued as Annex 19 to the 5th Corps Neptune orders. It reflects a careful balance between audacity and caution. The direct cliff assault remains central, but it is reinforced by flanking moves and follow-up support, giving the Rangers flexibility if the initial landing falters. Both Ranger battalions remain at Braunton Burrows for final rehearsals. The exercise reveals a practical problem. Rangers become intermixed with troops of the 29th Infantry Division. In a real assault, such confusion could cause fatal delays. The solution is simple but effective. Each Ranger helmet is marked with an orange diamond, bearing a black number 2 or 5 to indicate battalion. Orange stands out sharply against the drab-green helmet and remains visible in low light, unlike the standard blue shoulder patch. The air campaign against Pointe du Hoc itself begins on April 25, 1944. Aircraft from the 409th and 416th Bomb Groups strike the battery, destroying at least one position, cutting communications, and killing 2 German soldiers. The garrison of 2nd Battery, Heereskusten Artillerieabteilung 1260, quietly moves its guns inland to the Geren Farm, 900 meters from the coast. On April 27, 1944, the 5th Rangers move to Camp D1 at Dewlish near Dorchester, while A, B, and C companies of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, together with their medical and headquarters units, move to Camp D5 at Broadmain. All are placed on alert for exercise Fabius I. By the end of April 1944, the Rangers have completed some of the toughest and most realistic training of the war. Their assault plan is finalized, their equipment is tested, and within weeks they will face the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc itself. On May 1st, 1944, Companies A, B, and C of the 2nd Ranger Battalion embark on HMS Prince Charles. Companies D, E, and F embark at Swanage on HMS Ben My Cree and HMS Amsterdam. On the evening of May 3rd, all companies assemble in Weymouth Harbour. The vessels have carried Rangers before during operations in the Mediterranean. Below decks, the men sling hammocks. They are issued American 10-in-1 rations cooked by shipboard staff, though few look forward to the meals. Time on board is filled with briefings, training films, gambling, and card games. Exercise Fabius I begins on May 4th. It is the largest full-scale rehearsal for the invasion of Normandy, staged on the coast near Dartmouth. Units include the 1st Battalion of the 116th Regimental Combat Team, the 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalions, and 2 platoons of amphibious tanks. For the 2nd Ranger Battalion, the mission is clear. At H-hour, Companies D, E, and F land at a small cliff and seize their objective. Company C lands with the 116th Regimental Combat Team and simulates clearing the beach defenses. 1 hour later, the 5th Ranger Battalion and Companies A and B of the 2nd Ranger Battalion with headquarters detachment come ashore. Company B leads the advance, with Company A providing flank protection, while the 5th Ranger Battalion follows. For the exercise, Companies A and B are placed under the operational control of the 5th Ranger Battalion. Fabius I ends on May 5th. By May 7th, both Ranger Battalions are back in Swanage, Dorset. On May 9th, the 2 battalions are formally combined into a Provisional Ranger Group under Lieutenant Colonel James Rudder. Planning staffs join to form a single war office. Training continues at pace. Companies D, E, and F concentrate on cliff climbing. They rehearse assaults using DUKWs fitted with firefighting ladders to simulate scaling coastal defenses. In one exercise, the Rangers climb cliffs more than 30 meters high, securing their beachhead. But the DUKWs struggle on wet sand. Their overinflated tires fail to grip. The lesson is not forgotten. On May 11th, 1944, Rudder's Provisional Ranger Group is placed under the command of the 116th Regimental Combat Team. Ranger operations are formally integrated into the regiment's Neptune plan. At the same time, Force X is renamed Force B, and Force Y becomes Force C. The missions are refined. Force A, 3 reinforced companies, will land at H-hour at the base of the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc, destroy the battery, repel counterattacks, and hold. Force B, 1 company, will land 3 minutes after H-hour on Dog Green sector of Omaha Beach. Their task is to breach wire, destroy German positions at Pointe Ras de la Percée, and then push west to link with Force A. Force C, the 5th Rangers with Companies A and B of the 2nd Rangers, will land at H plus 60 minutes. If Force A succeeds and signals by H plus 30, Force C will land at Pointe du Hoc to reinforce. If not, they will land at Dog Green and advance 6.5 kilometers inland to assault Pointe du Hoc from the east. The sluice gate on the Ruisseau de Fontaine-Sainte-Marie, about 2.3 kilometers west of Pointe du Hoc, is marked as a key waypoint. German flooding in this sector has created natural barriers that the Rangers must overcome. The wider objective for the 116th Regimental Combat Team and the Ranger Group is to seize Grand-Camp-les-Bains and the Maisy batteries, then push inland towards Isigny-sur-Mer. Airstrikes continue. On May 13th, the 322nd Bomb Group attacks Pointe du Hoc but achieves little due to poor weather. On May 22nd, the 323rd Bomb Group returns. This raid is more effective, heavily damaging an emplacement and halting organization-taught construction work. In May, the Rangers are billeted around Swanage. The 2nd Ranger Battalion occupies a school overlooking the town, while the 5th Ranger Battalion is housed in the Grand Hotel on the cliff. Shore fire control parties join them for training. The men are allowed leave in Weymouth and Dorchester, though transport is scarce and long marches common. On May 17th, the Provisional Ranger Group begins moving to Camp D5 near Dorchester, their final station before embarkation. D, E, and F companies remain at Swanage for rock climbing practice until May 22nd, when they rejoin the group. Final preparations now begin. Personal gear is cut to essentials. 5 men share one duffel bag. Each carries ammunition, medical supplies, and 2 life preservers. At Dorchester, Major General Clarence Hubner of the 1st Infantry Division addresses them. He calls the Rangers the finest soldiers in the Army and says he is proud to land beside them. His short speech is remembered as both blunt and inspiring. By late May, security tightens. The Rangers are told their true objective, Pointe du Hoc. Barbed wire encloses the camp. Military police patrol the perimeter. No one leaves. Briefings cover maps, photographs, and terrain models. Every man learns not only his own role, but the missions of the entire group. Documents are later destroyed, leaving few written records. The nights bring danger. German aircraft raid frequently. On May 29th, bombs fall near the Ranger bivouac. Trenches save lives. A motor pool across the road takes the worst of the blast. Several military police are killed or wounded. Some Rangers suffer cuts and bruises, but none are hospitalized. Vehicles are destroyed, but overall damage is limited. On May 20th, 1944, a report reaches the Chief of Combined Operations in Whitehall. It is written by the Director of Experiments for Operational Requirements and concerns recent trials at Burton Bradstock of Ranger Specialist Equipment, automatic ladders. The findings state that the ladders work satisfactorily, though crews need more training to understand their capabilities and limits. Choice of landing site and cliff position is crucial. These, the report notes, are matters of training and can be corrected. Although the rocket-projected ladder is not an official British project, the same issues apply. Angle of elevation, windage, and ladder weight all matter. After trials, 4 operational models are built. Waterproof covers are added to protect weapons, microphones, and mounts in poor weather. Photographs show 3 guns at the ladder top. Sources disagree on type. Some list aerial Brownings, Browning automatic rifles, Lewis guns, or Vickers K guns. The evidence suggests 3 Browning automatic rifles. Each ladder head carries 6 spare magazines or pans. Total weight, including climber, weapons, and ammunition, is capped at 204 kilograms to avoid strain. Later reports highlight advantages. The system needs little training, delivers covering fire instantly, is fast, silent, effective on overhanging cliffs, and carries a beach-to-cliff telephone line. But there are drawbacks. Maximum height is only 24 meters. The beach must be suitable and free of obstacles. Effectiveness declines as cliffs slope, and the system is scarce. To support the Escalade, 4 amphibious DUKWs are modified, codenamed Swan 1-4. Each carries a 30-meter London Fire Brigade extension ladder, 3 folding sections mounted on jacks. At the ladder, head a steel shield, and twin Vickers K guns allow suppressive fire as Rangers climb beneath. Each SWAN has a 7-man crew. 3 are assigned to the assault companies, with 1 in reserve. They are designed to haul both supplies and assault ladders ashore. Rocket projectors are also mounted on British-manned landing craft, Assault. Each craft carries 6 launchers, 2 rope ladders, 2 toggle ropes, and 2 plane ropes. Rockets fire grapnels with ropes coiled in boxes behind. Each craft also carries 2 hand projectors to be used ashore. 10 British landing craft assault are allocated, enough for companies D, E and F of the 2nd Ranger Battalion and headquarters, about 21 men per craft. 3 pairs of J projectors are fitted, 1 for manila ropes, 1 for toggle ropes, and 1 for rope ladders with 60-centimeter rungs. Rockets are fired in pairs from a single control point. 2 portable hand projectors provide backup. Extension ladders are also prepared. Each landing craft assault carries 1 34-meter tubular steel ladder in 1.2-meter sections, each weighing less than 2 kilograms. Sections are partly pre-assembled in 5-meter lengths. A ranger climbs, hauls up the next section, locks it, and repeats until full height. Trials show the system works, but ladders sometimes separate at the base. Safety ropes for each climber are advised. At the top, pulleys allow rapid hauling of ladders, gear, and even stretchers. The assault force is stripped for speed. Each company carries 4 BARs, 2 mortars, and 10 thermite grenades. 2 landing craft assault follow with extra rations, ammunition, and equipment. Company D is tasked with assaulting the western face of Pointe du Hoc. Companies E and F attack the eastern side. Once secure, they push inland to hold the coastal road between Grand Camp and Vierville. If Omaha Beach landings succeed, the 116th Regimental Combat Team should link with them by noon. By then, the remaining Rangers, 8 companies in total, will reinforce the position. Naval fire support is available on call, with artillery landing near Vierville after 8 a.m. A 12-man naval shore fire control party is attached to Rudder's headquarters, together with an artillery forward observer. Rudder's group is distributed among 4 landing craft assault of Company E. Ranger Force B is tasked with neutralizing German defenses at Pointe-Ras de la Percée, which overlooks Dog Green sector. From here, German fire can sweep the 116th Infantry Regiment, attached to the 1st Division for the assault. Captain Ralph Goranson commands Force B. 2 plans are drawn up. If the 1st Battalion 116th Regimental Combat Team clears Dog Green, Force B passes through the Vierville Draw and advances west with tank support from the 743rd Tank Battalion. If resistance is heavy, Plan 2 is used. Force B lands 200 to 300 meters west, near the boundary of Dog Green and Charlie Beaches, and climbs directly without tanks. After securing Pointe-Ras de la Percée, they advance to capture the radar station at Le Gay. The naval force is Assault Group 04 of the Royal Navy, commanded by Commander Stratford H. Dennis. It transports the Rangers in 5 landing ship infantry vessels, each carrying a flotilla of landing craft assault. HMS Ben My Tree, Company F, elements of Company E, and part of Battalion Headquarters, 2nd Rangers, plus a detachment of the 58th Field Artillery Battalion. HMS Amsterdam, Company D, elements of Company E, and part of Battalion Headquarters, 2nd Rangers, plus Naval Shore Fire Control Party. HMS Prince Charles, Companies A, B, C, and Headquarters, 2nd Rangers, plus elements of Battalion HQ and a Shore Fire Party. HMS Prince Leopold, Companies A, B, and E, 5th Rangers, plus Battalion HQ detachment. HMS Prince Baudouin, Companies C, D, and F, 5th Rangers, plus Battalion HQ detachment. The flotillas carrying Force A are escorted by landing craft support medium. These modified landing craft assault mount a 102mm smoke mortar, twin .50 caliber Vickers, and Lewis guns, providing suppressive fire and smoke. 1 American crewed vessel, Landing Craft Tank 5413, commanded by Lieutenant Commander A. Hayes, carries the 4 SWAND UKWS. Ranger Force B embarks in 2 LCAs from HMS Prince Charles. Captain Goranson sails in LCA 418 with Lieutenant William Moody's 1st Platoon, while LCA 1038 carries Lieutenant Sidney Salamon's 2nd Platoon. Force B is armed with M1 rifles, 7 Thompson submachine guns, 4 bars, 2 60mm mortars, and 2 bazookas. They also carry 20 Bangalore torpedoes and 72 kilograms of C2 explosive. Their craft lack J projectors, as scaling is not expected, though toggle ropes are carried as a precaution. Force C is supported by 2 landing craft tanks of Assault Group 02, attached to the 116th Regimental Combat Team. These carry the Ranger Cannon Company's M3 gun motor carriages and support vehicles. Each landing group is guided by a fair-mile motor launch to ensure the flotillas reach their assigned sectors. By the end of May 1944, every man in the Provisional Ranger Group knows his role. The assault force is trained, equipped, and rehearsed. Ahead lies the sea run to Pointe du Hoc, the narrow shingle at the cliff base, and the climb into history. On June 1, 1944, the Rangers embark aboard the vessels of Assault Group 04. At 08:15, Companies A, B, and C of the 2nd Ranger Battalion leave Camp D5 at Dorchester by truck. They reach Weymouth by 9 a.m. and board ship at 11 a.m. 2 hours later, at 10 a.m., Companies D, E, and F depart Dorchester. They arrive at 11:15 and embark at 12:30. Colonel James Earl Rudder, commander of the Provisional Ranger Group, goes aboard the headquarters ship, the landing ship infantry, small, Prince Charles, under Royal Navy Commander Stratford H. Dennis. The weather is cool and unsettled. Dark clouds pass overhead, but shed little rain. The channel is rough, the ships rolling heavily. The Rangers sense this restless water will be their first enemy. Life aboard follows routine. Men carry on duties and training as if it is just another rehearsal. No nervousness shows. They know their task and intend to succeed. Death and destruction may lie ahead, but confidence remains high. Faith in the mission sustains them. Conditions below deck are cramped. The Rangers are packed into the first hold. They sleep in hammocks strung about 1.5 meters above the deck. At first, many struggle to climb in. Some swing helplessly, others fall straight out. With persistence and humor, all eventually manage. Curled tight, they find uneasy rest. The invasion date remains a mystery. Speculation runs constant, but nothing official is said. Instead, battle plans are rehearsed endlessly. Maps and photographs are studied until every detail is memorized. Names such as Pointe du Hoc, Grand Camp-les-Bains, Vierville-sur-Mer, and Dog Green Beach become second nature. Contingencies are discussed. Scenarios are tested. The senior staff spend long hours refining the plan. Weapons, ammunition, and equipment are checked again and again. Life belts are tested. Administrative arrangements are confirmed. Nothing is left to chance. The Rangers know they have a job to do, and they are determined to show the world how it can be done. Colonel Rudder had originally intended to lead the cliff assault at Pointe du Hoc himself, but Major General Clarence Hubner, commanding the 1st Infantry Division, reminds him of his wider duty as leader of the entire Ranger Group. Rudder concedes. He will accompany Force C under Lieutenant Colonel Max Schneider, tasked with advancing inland to Pointe du Hoc. Command of Force A, the assault teams who will scale the cliffs, passes to Captain Cleveland A. Lytle, Executive Officer of the 2nd Rangers. On June 3, 1944, the battalion's vehicles are loaded at the Hard in Portland. Among them are the 4 ladder-equipped DUKWs, codenamed SWAN, prepared for the cliff assault at Pointe du Hoc. That same day, Colonel James Earl Rudder boards the landing ship infantry Ben My Tree to deliver news to Captain Cleveland A. Lytle. He informs him of his promotion to Major and marks the occasion with a gift, nearly 1 liter of gin. The gesture backfires. That evening, Lytle becomes heavily intoxicated. He voices strong opposition to the Pointe du Hoc mission, claiming that French intelligence already indicates the German guns have been removed. He calls the mission a suicide operation, denouncing it loudly in front of other officers. When challenged, Little lashes out. He even attempts to strike Captain Doc Block, the battalion surgeon. Order breaks down until the Ben My Tree's commanding officer, Lieutenant C.W.R. Cross, steps in. Lytle is placed under restraint. On June 4, 1944, worsening weather forces General Dwight D. Eisenhower to postpone the invasion by 24 hours. The Prince Charles returns briefly to Weymouth Harbor. That same day, Colonel Rudder receives word of Captain Cleveland Lytle's conduct aboard the Ben My Tree. Rudder dispatches Captains Richard Merrill, Harvey Cook, and Frank Corder to investigate. Their inquiry confirms that Lytle has lost faith in the mission. Captain Cook advises against his removal, but Rudder decides otherwise. Avoiding formal disciplinary measures, he orders Lytle taken ashore under military police guard and placed in hospital. That afternoon, the largest medium bomber raid against Pointe du Hoc is launched. The aim is to weaken the German battery and its defenses ahead of the Rangers' assault. At 15:02, the 416th Bombardment Group, flying from Royal Air Force Wethersfield, strikes first. 37, a 20G, and 6 A-20H Havocs drop nearly 46 tons of bombs. Damage is later rated good to fair. At 15:22, 20 minutes later, the 409th Bomb Group follows from Royal Air Force Little Walden. 42, a 20 Havocs release about 46 tons more. This second wave achieves only poor to fair results. Aerial reconnaissance later that day reveals roughly 60 new craters across the battery site. Some fall close to vital targets, including the command post and several gun emplacements. Yet the overall structural damage is mixed. German records from the same day provide more detail. 3 personnel bunkers are hit directly but remain largely intact. The emplacement for gun number 6 is destroyed. A decontamination room and weapons store are demolished. But remarkably, German reports note no casualties from the raid. What the Allies do not yet realize is that by early June, the guns have already been removed. The battery's 6 155mm pieces now sit concealed at the Guérin farm, about 1 kilometer inland from Pointe du Hoc. On June 5, 1944, the dismissal of Captain Little forces Colonel James Earl Rudder to re-evaluate his own role. He decides that he will personally lead Ranger Force A in the assault on the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc. At 2 o'clock, aboard the USS Ancon, Rudder seeks out Major General Clarence Hubner of the 1st Infantry Division. General Omar Bradley later recalls this as a dramatic confrontation, Hubner forbidding Rudder's involvement, Rudder threatening defiance. Yet Rudder's biographer, Thomas Hatfield, suggests the exchange was calmer, noting that Rudder's revised landing time placed him only slightly ahead of schedule. Whatever the tone, the result is the same. Hubner grants permission. Rudder will land with Force A. Major Richard Sullivan takes Rudder's place aboard the Prince Charles as acting group commander afloat. For the men of the Provisional Ranger Group, the day feels little different. Some debate the invasion plan, its strengths and flaws. Others lounge in their hammocks, the rat holes, dozing or joking. The card players continue their regular games, their faces intent and unreadable. Hours from combat, they still play as if nothing has changed. Others focus on equipment. Grenades are tucked into newly sewn trouser pockets. Meat can carriers are fixed behind cartridge belts to hold more. Small improvised adjustments, but ones that might lighten the load in battle. By evening, anchors are raised. The ships slip from harbor into their positions in the fleet. D-Day is set for June 6, 1944. H-hour is fixed at 7 a.m. Only the waters of the Channel remain between the Rangers and their target. As Assault Group 02 departs Weymouth, Rudder moves between the Ranger ships aboard a motor launch. He delivers brief, final words of encouragement to each company. At 16:45, the Prince Charles, flagship of Assault Group 04, leads out of Portland Harbor. Other elements of the group sail from Weymouth. Together, they join the vast convoy bound for the Omaha transport area, some 20 kilometers off the coast of Normandy. The movement unfolds under cover of darkness. Minesweepers clear the way. Destroyers close in to protect the vulnerable transports. Above, overcast skies and poor visibility make navigation difficult. Below, the channel is restless. The ships pitch and roll, battered by waves. Yet they keep formation, holding course within the Great Armada. By nightfall, the Rangers are at sea. The next land they see will be France. In the early hours of June 6, 1944, the convoy carrying the Rangers reaches the Omaha transport area, about 20 kilometers off the coast of Normandy. Orders are given for the men to rest early. At 3 o'clock, they are to load into their landing craft Assault. The mother ships are judged too large, too vulnerable. In smaller craft, the Rangers will be harder to hit and more easily deployed. At 3:28, HMS Prince Charles arrives on station. On board, Colonel James Earl Rudder prepares to lead Ranger Force A in the assault on Pointe du Hoc. 25 minutes later, at 3:53, he transfers by motor launch from the Prince Charles to HMS Ben Mai Tree, which carries roughly half of his assault force. The Rangers on board of their landing ship infantry gather in the holds, weapons checked, ropes coiled, ladders stowed, grapnels ready. Ahead lies the coast of France, the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc and Omaha Beach. And that concludes today's episode. The Rangers are in position. The ships ride at anchor in the darkness of the channel, the coast of Normandy just beyond the horizon. In a few hours, Force A will lower away in their landing craft, Assault, and begin the run toward the shingle at the base of Pointe du Hoc. Ahead lies a sheer 30-meter climb under fire, and the uncertainty of what waits at the top. Months of planning, training, and preparation have brought the Provisional Ranger Group to this moment. Every detail, from rocket-propelled grapnels to modified DUKWs, from shore fire control parties to precisely timed naval gunfire, has been tested, refined, and rehearsed. Now there is no more time for changes. The operation will either succeed in hours or fail in minutes. In the next 4 episodes, we'll follow the Rangers through the full course of their operations on June 6, 1944. Episode 2, The Run to the Cliffs. We trace Ranger Force A's hazardous approach from the transport area to Pointe du Hoc, navigating enemy fire, confusion, and the deadly surf. Episode 3, The Fight on the Point. After scaling the cliffs, Force A battles to secure the position, searching for the missing guns and holding off German counterattacks. Episode 4, Ranger Force B at Pointe de la Percée. We follow Captain Ralph Goranson's men as they land at the western edge of Omaha Beach and fight to secure the flanks. Episode 5, Ranger Force C's Overland Push. Major Max Schneider leads his battalion in a drive along the bluffs, clearing German strongpoints and racing to link up with Force A. For more information about the preparations for the assault on Omaha Beach, visit www.worldwar2-sof.com. There, you'll find photographs, videos, maps, and original documents on the subject, along with a fuller list of sources that informed this episode. Among the most valuable works we drew on are Allied Intelligence and the Cover-Up at Pointe du Hoc by historian Gary Stern, D-Day, Cover-Up at Pointe du Hoc, The History of the 2nd and 5th U.S. Army Rangers, 1st May to 10th June 1944, also researched and written by Stern. The Cover-Up at Omaha Beach, Maisie Battery, and the U.S. Rangers, another of Stern's major studies. Smashing Hitler's Guns, The Rangers at Pointe du Hoc, D-Day 1944. Military historian Stephen J. Zaloga. Together, these works provide both the broad picture and the fine detail behind the Rangers' role in Normandy. They, along with many other sources, have guided our research for this episode. Join us next time as the landing craft, assault turn for the beach, engines straining, the dark line of the French coast looming closer, and the Rangers prepare to begin one of the most dangerous missions of D-Day. These stories remind us that the fate of entire campaigns often rested on the shoulders of small, elite units, those who led from the front, striking hard and holding fast in the face of overwhelming odds. Thank you for listening to the Special Forces in World War II podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. Your support helps us continue to bring you more stories of courage, daring, and the unsung heroes of World War II. Be sure to tune in next time as we dive into yet another remarkable operation that helped shape the outcome of the war. Until then, keep your wits sharp, your courage steady, and remember, sometimes the most incredible victories come from the unlikeliest of places. See you in the next episode. I'm your host, Michael Wires, signing off. And that concludes this mission briefing, fellow warriors of knowledge. We've navigated through the trenches of information, delving deep into the battlefields of history. As we wrap up this episode in our campaign for understanding, remember that knowledge is your most potent weapon. Stay vigilant and keep sharpening your intellectual arsenal. We'll rendezvous again for another episode, continuing our relentless pursuit of enlightenment. Until then, keep your mind sharp, your curiosity burning, and your determination unwavering. Simultaneously, you are hereby alerted to our outposts on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, fortifying our information dissemination. Should you possess any pertinent intelligence to bolster our mission, transmit your findings with no hesitation. Your contributions shall be prominently acknowledged within the operational archives. Furthermore, for those prepared to provide substantial reinforcement, navigate to our Patreon forward base and enlist. Your support is integral to sustaining our forward thrust. Carry forth the legacy. Dismissed.